Thank you, Chairman Meeks, for your continued leadership on this issue. It is odd but consistent that this administration's modernization efforts betray the fundamental mission of what they hope to modernize. The Community Reinvestment Act is no exception. Over the weekend, the New York Times published an editorial highlighting the many problematic elements of the FDIC and OCC's December proposal. Under this proposal, loans for improvements to stadiums that, quote, happen to sit in poor neighborhoods, unquote, could earn banks CRA credit. Compare that to the values and data-driven approach outlined by Governor Brainerd. The Federal Reserve has notably withheld its support. Now, although this was a consistent through line in all of your testimonies, I do believe it bears underscoring. So for the record, and this is to everyone on the panel, by show of hands, how many of today's witnesses support the FDIC OCC proposed rule? How many support the Federal Reserve's approach prioritizing keeping branches open, small dollar loans, and impactful community investment? Again, by show of hands.
It's a better start.
This past weekend, I was fortunate enough to host the very first and historic Congressional Black Fly-In in my district, the Massachusetts 7th. Now, during an economic justice panel, including community leaders, entrepreneurs, and industry representatives, we discussed the many challenges our communities face when it comes to access to capital. One of the more compelling stories was that of a company founded and owned by a Black woman. The company's called TrillFit. Her name is Heather White, and she was unable to access capital and instead liquidated her entire 401k in order to open a business. Women, Black women, particularly struggle to secure financing for everything from a business to a home. Earlier this year, when the big bank CEOs testified in front of this committee, I questioned the witnesses about this disparity in lending, which one report smartly labeled as quote unquote pink lining. The report found that women were 30 to 46% more likely to receive subprime mortgage loans during the financial crisis than men. Black women were 250% more likely to receive subprime loans than white men. That's 256%. Ms. Levi, how does this proposal ensure that Black and brown women will continue to be targeted, if not more likely to be targeted, with these predatory financial products?
Well, first of all, quality, a lot of the qualitative factors that are currently a part of the exam are out of this proposal. This is a dollar volume driven approach, and that contravenes quality. And furthermore, I would say to the gentleman about rural areas, you can't allow banks to fail in over half of their local communities and still pass an exam at the bank level.
I would also say that the OCC's discrimination guidelines, in terms of the way that they evaluate discrimination as part of their CRA exams, are weaker than the Federal Reserve and the FDIC. They had an opportunity to strengthen that as part of this proposal and downgrade for harm that's caused by discrimination, and they did not do that as part of this proposal.
Thank you. And Ms. Rodriguez, how is the CRA building upon that influence the development of and delivery of financial products for communities of color more broadly?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I mean, I would just add to the previous answer, it's a great point, and it's a factor in how the markets are changing and the needs of the community are changing. Someone earlier, a congressman, mentioned meritocracy. The very reason why we have CRAs is because credit wasn't divvied out based on merit. It was based on race and ethnicity, and the country's changed now, and we want this to adapt and modernize to the changing country. Half of, or the Latino community in rural communities has doubled in years and is a fast-growing population. When we're talking about rural communities, are we thinking about Latinos in rural communities? Are we thinking about women? I think those are important points to raise and add to this conversation.
And Ms. Rodriguez, with the remaining balance of my time, what happens when CRA-covered banks exit neighborhoods or close branches?
Another excellent question. Look, I grew up in Red Hook, Brooklyn. When I grew up, I had no banks in my community. There was one on the outskirts of my neighborhood because the battery tunnel was there. So when people needed to go to tolls to get some money, there was a bank there for them. There were not people who looked like me and you in those communities who had access to banking, and we paid a price for that over time, and it's a legacy that we're paying for even now as we look at disparities in wealth and disparities in access to credit and equality. Thank you.
The gentle lady's time.